Okay. In the name of God, the most benevolent and the most merciful and the most advanced, in honor of the original unconditional moment and all conditional moments have arisen from and will return to, in the presence of the divine surveillance state and the system admin of this existential simulated system. In other words, in honor of the world host beyond of beyond and of this world. All right, folks. I said at lecture 2600 I would stop, but it seems I haven't. Also, there's one more lecture for me to upload that I recorded from before. I wanted to talk about something because today, intuitively, I I don't know how to tell you. I received like a signal in my inner realms that it's very important for me to come and explain in what sense I speak about an advanced civilization and in how many different views can we see what it means that there is a world government, one world government, and what is the value of one world government. And from a certain view, I can see that nations are like prototypes for the one world government, but I will explain. I've also prepared a research component to read. The whole point of this lecture is not to administer ethical judgment on what is right and wrong. I have taught them pretty much a human being can talk about the past, they can talk about the present, or they can talk about the future. So you got to keep in mind, whoever is listening, okay? I don't care what groups you're affiliated with. I don't say this disrespectfully. I don't care who you are, what sort of confirmation of reality you have accumulated so far. I am simply sharing and reporting back to the species how my DNA, how I, as one member of the human species, perceive this notion of how it is inevitable and there will be a one world government, but it will be a one world attempting to govern all these different worlds. And I don't know, it's one of those things that even if there's conspiracy about it, where it could be, the conspiracy doesn't satisfy. The conspiracy doesn't satisfy because let me tell you why. Because it's just like Fermat's last theorem. Fermat at the time claimed in his theorem, in his famous mathematical theorem, what is x2 plus y equals z, and he declared and claimed that he had a proof, you know, and then nobody could solve this theorem. It was one of the millennium questions in mathematics. Whoever would solve it would get a million. Eventually, there came a time that, if I remember correctly, my memory serves me right. It's a matter of advanced. Um, oh, sorry, it's Andrew Wales, if I remember correctly, something like that. The guy's name is Andrew Wales. He managed to solve Fermat's last theorem. They asked him, "How did you solve it? And did Fermat have the answer?" And he said, "I don't believe Fermat had the answer because I the only way I solved this was from a new branch of mathematics that was developed after Fermat's time." So, in other words, if there was anybody any sort of vision, any sort of conspiracy, even cultural orchestration towards this, it's as if it's like Fermat claiming he solved the problem, but only Andrew Wells knew what the solution looked like. Some access the solution. Maybe Fermat was advanced enough to visualize that mathematics. Maybe he was ahead of its time. We don't know. Ahead of his time. But what I'm saying is, in the same way, any vision for a one world government, it is one of those things that we, the modern generations, are permitted access to the solution. In other words, I know that there is, um, this world is layered. I know there's deeper layers of physical reality. I also know that many traditions around the world have been conscious of these things. And they've established a relationship with other dimensions based on actions and intention and attention. And really, your intention, it's all actually attention. Where your attention is, you intend something for, and your intention occurs as an action. So, anyways, it's important to consider this. For this lecture, I gotta figure out a way of like buying some sort of like digital blackboard that I can write on. I don't have that now, but I have a notepad. And I was thinking like, okay, I'm playing a specific role here. It has a sort of magnitude for me. I personally see myself as like the consigliere of the species. If there was some sort of council of like elder council of like, I don't know, I feel like a part of me cares for what happens to all of this, and that's the part I'm honored. So, dear viewers, I'm somebody on Earth in human history. First person calling himself Mr. Within. First person subsequently talking this much about an advancement of civilization. There has been others, but I'm saying that there is something that it's like my life is important to me because it's happening right now for me. But I also understand that to be alive means you are accessing the world that you can influence beyond your lifetime. As someone who has understood, or let me tell you, I think, and I don't know, maybe the future generations may see this. I don't know if people will see it now. But if I was to be born again hilariously, like in the future, and I was to look at myself, the impression I would have is that Mr. Within is that human being in 2026 that has discovered the most important argument and the conclusion of all arguments on the surface of the earth. I am bold enough to live up to that and tell you how. So, dear viewers, you're listening to one of the early birds who has began singing the songs of the advanced civilization. Why is the concept of an advanced civilization key? And what is the value of a one world government, which I am, like, the only thing I can do is share, like, how I see it, and the reasoning behind it. So, this is to some degree an analytical episode. I am sharing with you, I guess, my conclusions. You're getting to see, how I have concluded reality. So I'm going to begin from here. first thing that Mr. Within is saying to humanity is that your lives are divided between an outer realms that happens in front of your eyes and an inner realms that happens behind your eyes. The inner realms is private and you have access to subjective eventhood, subjective events, subjectivity. When it comes to the outer realms, it's a public event and you have access to objectivity. So first thing Mr. Within is saying, yo, all these self-help and all these people try to enlighten everybody throughout history. Let me cut them some slack and remind the human species that you are seeking enlightenment for an individual. But if you look at it, individuality is a very weird concept. In a dualistic place, that means that so in Mr. Within school of thought, there's four corners to the world, guys. There's four quadrants. Okay? And I call this the ring of the I term this the ring of the absent heaven. And the reason I call that it's zero, one to infinity, and it's a circle, it's a cycle. But I explain it as quadrants to people. So one quadrant is the number zero, one quadrant is the number one, not one quadrant is the number two, and one quadrant is the infinity symbol. Okay, and to me, as someone who I wouldn't say I am a philosopher in the common sense, I am saying I am someone who could not avoid the intensity of realizing symbols cannot replace reality. To be honest, the human species in 2026, it is intoxicated. It is not sober. It is not the most advanced state of humanity. Going back to the ring of the absent heaven, I was this guy who, think of it this way, my explorations in philosophy are like someone who's bored of the past and present, and to some degree, I'm going to the frontiers of whatever humanity is perceiving and wondering where is the uncharted. You're listening to a soul that has been seeking the uncharted aspects of reality. It's like my parent. I was raised by parents that told me to be honest and to be good, but they did not explain what those terms meant. And as I lived in this life, I tried to be good, and I'm like, wait a minute, what do I do with all the bad that's here? What if the system is bad? And then in some sense, in regards to honesty, I was like, how can I be honest, and still be myself? Because what the self is actually a processing. It's a verb. It's the verb of an event. So everything that you can perceive as a noun, it's because a very complex verb is allowing. Okay, and life is like a sine wave between nouns and verbs. There are moments of it where you're like, yeah, man, I'm just this down. And there's some moments of it where you're like, is this a flow state? Have I discovered ultra instinct and you're flowing in a way in your realm that it is you are neither a stranger or entrapped by manifestation. It's like at some point this life shows you what you don't know. And it's not about courage. It's like at some point it's the unknown. Ladies and gentlemen, I am allergic to our species that we have been living in a subjective linguistic situation, and the species is outgrowing that, and the species doesn't know how else to acknowledge itself. In other words, you need to think of it this way: before there's the notion of a one world government, the only way that's possible if there is a global reset. That means something has to reset everybody's value systems. Now, we hope it is not an external event. We hope it's not a tragic event. Right now, I can tell you it's like the last 3, 4 years on Earth, it's like the nations of God cycle. I'm not even kidding. World War III is legit like a time bomb, and people are like, "Yo, man, what if somebody presses a nuclear bomb?" I'm like, "Buddy, think of it this way: right now, there's evil sane, evil leaders that are like at war, or let me, I shouldn't say evil. I'll say all nations are pretty much playing this game where to their own people they act like angels, but to other nations everybody's imperialist, which means they're all demonic. Okay, so sorry to say it, but politics is a demonic domain for at least the way it is now, because it's still savage. Anywhere there's savageness, there's impurity. Anywhere there's impurity, there's a demonic sector. It's in a demonic sector. And it's not that I care about it. Like, let me say it this way: I do not care what sort of being you are. I do not care if you are. I can even playfully give you a spectrum. I do not care. Anyways, guys, to continue, hopefully the audio's fine. Let me know if there's audio issues. I realize maybe there was wind hitting the microphone. Now it should be better. All right, guys. I was telling you that I am giving this talk in the presence of the creator of this created world. We are all within the attention of a higher order process, and we're simulated lower order processes. As simple as that. And because I am speaking in the presence of an original unconditional moment, it doesn't matter to me whatever condition in existence you are consciously a conscious experience of. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what planet in what solar system where in the cosmos you would have been born in. At some point, all conscious beings begin to realize the limits of their design, and at some point understand that they are inside a box. Okay, all it doesn't matter if it's an individual, the species, it's just part of how it's designed. Okay, so species, it's what, let's say a person realizes they're inside a box, and they realize everything that they've been giving meaning to has been the relationship of elements in the box. Now if there is a reality outside of the box, if there is a presence beyond the world room, then everything in the world room that is being considered is being considered a limit, has a limit. The limit of the edge of the box is false or not incomplete. So what I'm telling you, give me a second, guys. This is like, I think I gotta put the phone closer to myself. Hold on. I find this to be an incredible lecture. I don't know. All right, folks, it should be better. This should be better. I'm going to check. Okay, the audio should be better. I think it is. I'm gonna keep going, guys, so I don't lose the rhythm of what I was saying. At some point, I brought. Sorry, at some point I brought this notion of the ring of the absent heaven, zero one to infinity. I just wanted to explain that in my findings of all the different ways you can look in the world, I pretty much like figured out. I solved the philosophy's Rubik's cube by understanding the contextual ways that reality can be perceived. So all human thought so far falls into four categories, folks. Okay, either it's about the number zero. The value of it is zero. It's a response of consciousness to the void. Okay, I call this in my sci-fi also voidists. Voidists are those who believe the value of this system is zero. Okay, then you have the singularians. Okay, the singularians are those, okay, who believe that reality is primarily singular. That means you believe everything is one moment. You believe this is one event. You and even you have the capability of within that one seeing more singular points like concentric layers or like in an onion style. Okay, but before you get to that, like, okay, let's say singular means it's just one thing. Okay, the value of the whole system is one. Okay, a singularian. Then you have those, and this is the majority of people, pretty much everybody. Okay, where you have it's the number two, which means duality. These are the dualists, and I'm recontextualizing that, like redefining that. You know, dualitarians. You know, you could call them that, right? And these are beings who believe all reality contextually is dual. There's good, there's bad, there's right, there's wrong, there's the visible, there's the invisible, there's the known, there's the unknown. Okay. And then you have infinity, you have the infinitists. Okay. The infinitists are those who understand that up to duality, there is a noun like engagement with reality. But beyond duality, it's like 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2, or 2 to the power of 2 to the power of infinity. You know, at some point it reaches an infinite value. So it's like duality multiplied by another duality multiplied by another duality. It is it can reach infinity. You don't need three, four, five, all those others. Okay. So think of it this way: there's a way to look at this whole room as if it's empty. You can see truth as being there is no truth, it's empty. You can see the whole world, this world room, as if, okay, truth is singular, the whole thing is true. Do you know? And then you can have, in some sense, a nature of duality where you're like, okay, this isn't the only world. You know, it's like there's true and false in this world, and then there's excuse me, this world is false, the other world is true, for example. Do you know? This is the dualist. And then you have the infinitist, which says, what if all the conditions that I'm responding to are actually infinite? That means human beings, we cannot fathom an infinite being, but we can fathom an infinite quality. It's like somebody who is infinitely powerful. Let's say Superman has limits. He's conditionally powerful. He's not all powerful. But imagine there was somebody who was infinitely powerful, meaning that their energy never decreased. That would be like an infinitely powerful being, right? They had endless energy. It's like if you had endless energy and you wonder about the psychology of a being that has endless energy, you're going to realize it's not fathomable. It's not, you can't give a value to something that is infinite. You can give a value to something, value comes from the finitude of something. So, anyways, I'm here talking about what is the value of a one world government. I'm trying to take a structural approach to this, to all of this. I'm simply saying that there's 8.1 billion human beings on this planet, and their views are divided between these four quadrants. Okay, but because the human experience for now doesn't have access to infinity, and it's just like 0 2 and 0 2 1 0 1 2. So anyways, where am I going with this? In looking at human psychology, in realizing human beings have access to different domains, different rooms of reality. I'm not even kidding you. Like, they've conditioned you to think that thinking is like thinking, but no such, like, that word is a distraction. What it is that you are present. Everything you see in reality is in a singular way present. And because there is duality, there is a sort of acknowledgement of void. I'm telling you, beings are either singular, they're either dual, or they're infinite. These are like layers to reality. There's a dualistic layer to reality, ethics, morality, axiology. All of this comes down to the dualistic nature of phenomenology. There's something happening. It's like they're like, yo, man, it's like everybody relax. You need to go to school only to come to the realization that every human being is existing for the first time and experiencing themselves for the first time. And we have access not to human history, but human accurate imagination of what history was. That's the honest view. So before talking about the value of a one world government, we need to think of it this way, that the first instance of access to humanity that this being gets is itself. It's as if we are this unknown force. We are this unknown force that is using a self to filterize or nullify an unknown world. Do you understand this? So every person experiences humanity through themselves. Now, if we talk about the governance of humanity, which is the notion of a one world government, it's as if the one world government is hilariously also a fractal of how one human governs themselves. It's like how they said as above so below. The as above point and the so below point. Okay, the as above point. Hey guys, welcome to the chat section. If there's any comments or anything you guys feel like adding to the rhythm of the lecture, feel free to do so. Anyways, so I'm saying the as above point is one humanity. Let's start from there. One humanity governing itself. And the so below point is one human governing itself. This is understandable so far, right? So we're like, okay, It's like for me right now, I don't have access to 8.1 billion human minds right now. I can't empathize with 8.1 billion people. But I do have access to the experience of one human being. Like, that's my access point to humanity. Myself is me as an unknown force experimenting, just like scientists do, with what I am existentially, but I don't mean in the outer realms. You see, at first you think you're a character in an idea, like in a world story. You think you're a character in a story. That is basic conditioning. Like that's you snap out of that at some point and realize, no, every person has unknown variables and known variables to their moment of being. So when we wonder about how to govern, how does one human being govern themselves and how does humanity govern themselves, before we can solidify into a specific conceptual identity, before we identify with a solid concept, let's just for a second relax and be like, okay, if we have the human and that is in the conceptual view, in the conceptual viewpoint, and then we have the contextual viewpoint, which is the world, correct? So we have this self, which this concept of a self, and this concept of a self, it gets its definition based on where it is. Like selves are found with environments, okay? Beings or animals are found in environments. Okay, they're not just found like alone in a vacuum. Like how trippy would that be? Do you know? I think if extraterrestrials saw humans holding guns, like I'm going on a tangent here. There, there it is. Hold on, guys. Okay, sorry, guys. To continue. Okay, back to it. I was saying we have the conceptual position of the human, and then we have the context of the human, which is the idea of the world, which is the view of the world. Okay, so in the same moment that a human being is experiencing itself in a world, is the same moment simultaneously that a world is experiencing itself being a human for the first time. Okay, it's a sort of mutually alive relationship. Now, we look at the concept of the human and we are talking about governance. Okay. And so governance has to do with how a human being responds to its environment. So when we think about humanity governing itself, is how does all humanity respond to it, the whole environment, which is a universe, which leads us to universal stewardship, actually. Even if people say like, yo man, the no idea of a one world government is conspiracy, is like ancient conspiracy or something. I will say, guys, you don't understand. Evolution means growth. Growth means you're transitioning through phases of reality. The one world government is a phase of reality. It is only functionable until the moment. And the why the one world government makes sense, it doesn't have to do with like evil's like take on it. Do you know what I mean? It's efficiency. It's like, Let me tell you, there's good beings on this earth, there's bad beings on this earth, and then there's advanced beings. The advanced beings, their prayers to the system admin are in the equivalence of seeking the ultimate, the most advanced state, as if there was a human on earth who prayed to God, the system admin beyond the whole system, the administrator of the whole system, you know, and prayed to God that God show me the most advanced life of humanity. That means what would the most advanced way that everything can happen look like? Like if you look at average human psychology, you're functioning in a survival loop, and as you function in that survival loops, at certain points you get like a sense of, yo man, is there something else? You know, I'm trying to tell you that if we want to know the value of a one world government, we have to know how far this system can see. I see everything as a system. I think systems thinking is the most important way to look at life. It's something that parents should teach their children, and teachers should teach themselves. At some point, we're just explorers of an unknown world. Okay, and more you will realize it's not that the outer realms are more important than the inner realms are more important than the outer realms. It's like asking a bird which wing is more important. Both wings need to be synchronized. We need to not just see advanced physical humans, we need to see also advanced we need to also advance our inner realms as a species. So the concept of duality, okay, is found in how a human being interprets the world. Okay, so that means when it comes to world interpretation, the four quadrants apply. A person looks at this world and it's like it's nothing, man. Person looks at it, it's something, man. Somebody looks at it, it's like, yo, man, this is like there's a hidden world and an unhidden one. There's two worlds here. And somebody's like, yo, man, there's endless. There's no measurable, there's no way to contain it. So really what we find is, how does a human being govern itself? And if we can solve that, we pretty much solve how can all of humanity govern itself. Now, I am a firm believer that the garden of existence one is guided by a light beyond this world. I believe the unseen is in the jurisdiction of the system admin of this reality of the system. And at the same time, I am telling you, it is all a decision in design. I don't know how to say it. Like all of reality, it's designed, yo. Anyways, how far can we go? Let me simplify what I'm saying. I'm pretty much saying we are natural, original, biological humans that have been raised in a simulated reality, in a simulated man made reality, as in some sense characters in a story. Okay, we are all raised with being named and spoken to, and communication, and how advanced communication is a testament to like the human design. know, the notion of, let me say it this way. I've prepared the research component to read, but before I do, I'm pretty much saying that, guys, to me, you're looking at one planet. You're looking at one planet right now, with different resources in different parts of the planet, and you are seeing nations which are defined by certain regions, okay, and are technically abstract empires connecting to Earth through color of their flags. There's nothing wrong with nationalism. Nationalism singularized language. It was huge in the development of human psychology. But I'm saying that these nations are fighting with each other. They're all identifying with culture. What is culture? It's the behavior of those who've experienced that part of the world. Do you know? It's like this locational concluding of reality. And I'm saying that, okay, imagine if 8.1 billion people could vote for a select community of people to govern all of humanity in a way that their egos was not beyond the supremacy of a kind and honest analytical process. You know, what I'm telling you is that in the same way people are like, yo man, kings and queens are just symbols now of nations, they don't have power, you know. But it's this we're reaching that point where it's even happening to the notion of presidents. In the far future, all of humanity is just voting on policies like a multiple choice based on the greatest AI processing or something. Like you know how they say AI is going to take jobs. It could take the job of president. I could see people just voting on policies rather than having voting on an ego that has to select which the sequencing of the policies. So, anyways, what I'm saying is, at some point we're reaching this moment in history where we have to realize how primitive it is, and how much we've outgrown this t-shirt that's suffocating humans, right? Where if you think of it this way, we're like, what is a great citizen? Someone who's responsible for themselves, somebody who's been so responsible for themselves they can be responsible for others, and they're responsible for their family. Somebody who's so capable of being responsible for others, their family, that they're responsible for their community. And then somebody who's so responsible for their community, they're responsible for their nation. Somebody who's so responsible for their nation that they are responsible for the human species. You see, ladies and gentlemen, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was a step towards the right direction, but everything localized. Ethics is localized. You can never have one nation ruling all, because that nation's sense of right and wrong is local. So on some level, right, resources are limited to nations. Nations need, like, what are the options? They stay fragmented. So imagine, Emil Durkheim said this about society, how it was like mimicking like the human body or the human brain. Similarly, I want you to see all the nations, that have access to specific resources on the planet. It's like they're like, yo, man, no. It's like we're specific nations, and we're gonna have a global economy that's gonna be like a tornado, And then at some point you have this approach where, wait a minute, man, instead of identifying with the land, identify with the DNA. That means, if forget one world government zooming on that notion where every conspiracy is capitalized on, like, guys, you're looking at it wrong. You should start from human original nature. It's like all the good and bad guys right now on earth are natural and biological. There is a technological invasion of the natural human being happening. There, for a long time, there has been an ideological, excuse me, an ideological invasion of humanity. Do you understand? And to truly be present in this world, I think that if to have utmost clarity and concentration is by realizing you're an unknown being in an unknown place, rather than a specific known thing in a specific known place that you constantly suffer in regards to how you relate an identity. You know, the nature of what really is identifying with anything at all is so complex, but it's simply here as well that we in some sense forget how far it all goes. Dear viewers, this is what I'm saying. I'm saying nations were an attempt, or let me say this: nationalism had to in some sense accompany with itself a language, a singular language. And it was because of nationalism that there was a huge evolution in language of human consciousness, where people were speaking all these different dialects and it was more body language based. And then at some point they were like, no, this is the whole nation. The whole chunk of land, people living in the chunk of land gained a subjective identity to, they became a group. Just like Pokemon, where, like, that Pokemon evolved, right? Similarly, individual communities evolved into nations. What does that mean? It's the same thing cells do. It's constantly, it's like being something individually capable and then functioning in a collective system and then experiencing the whole system as a collect from a collective point of view that becomes the new individuality. In other words, it's inevitable. Nations are conquering each other with, like, dangerous weapons. They're fighting with each other with dangerous weapons. They're destabilizing, let's say, how civilization was stabilized. And this is going to continue until a global ethical concern comes is found, in the hearts, found in an eerie way from the heart's eyes. What does this mean? We've reached that point in human history that the cost of being a nationalistic individual is not worth all of us realizing we are the human species. We are members of the human species. That's when a world government should arise, not any moment before that. That's something very important. That human beings understand this whole time. I've been relating with the abstract symbolism of my ancestors, not realizing that it's now based on the furthest awareness. The test of leadership is always who has the furthest vision. They're like, who do you want to, who do you want to lead you? It's like someone who sees further than anybody else. I am saying that when nations appeared, they were a unification of all the groups of the land. Now they themselves are a group. And to me, I'm part of that generation that was raised at a very young age with shows where like robots, like robots assembled into one giant robot. Do you know what I mean? Humans inside these robots like assembled into one giant robot. That to me was very, there was something divine about that, right? To realize, to like, if my whole life I've been like, man, this is a miserable place, it's a cruel world. Aldous Huxley was right when he said this world, this earth is another world's hell. Like, you know what I mean? And then at some point you realize, what am I doing? Look, it's just like the poet Rumi said, you were born with wings, why prefer to crawl through life? And it means that sometimes it's about what is the true value of intelligence that is present for some time. To me, I was like, wait a minute, I'm wasting my days interacting with this world, not seeing its most advanced potential. That means now I live my life. Any person I see, I used to be like, oh man, I feel sorry for them, or oh man, like, they're better than me, or whatever. All those views are gone. Now I try to stand in a world where I'm in the presence of the most advanced state. Because to me, the most important duality beyond everything that is an existential concern is simply that I am a simulated position of intelligence, and this simulated position of intelligence wants to discover the original position of intelligence. The original position of intelligence is beyond the conditions, any condition. They're like, yo, man, how's your journey going to get close to God? And it's like, yeah, man, it's like in a conditional world, trying to notice an unconditional presence of a higher order process. I'm like, yeah, man, I get it. I didn't create this world. I didn't create my body. Do you know, at some point, consciousness just logged into an identity and it just played along with that, right? And so, really, what we are here is a biological simulation. Simultaneously, this biological simulation within itself and its inner realms, resimulates reality so much faster. That means in the outer realms, we have like our existential life, its lifespan is like 100 years. Our experiential life in one day can, through time dilation, experience endless. You can experience an eternity during like in 16 hours. It's called the conscious waking state. They're like, yo, man, how do you feel about life? If this world at the end of this life, they were like, hey, fill out a survey. I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, fill out a survey. How was your experience of Earth? And I'd be like, all right. It was like being in a world that you couldn't see its edge, and you didn't know what you were, and everything was happening beyond just the limits of one human free will's interpretation and meaning. And you looked at what was the point of it all, and you saw that inevitably consciousness sought its excitement, and its excitement was the potential of its integration. So what we're seeing is a human species, okay, living an individual life, honoring that individual life, but realizing its individual life, its true honor is based on its full acknowledgement of its moment. I'm saying that in the same way, you know, tribes became a nation. Okay, in the same way, nations are becoming a global tribe. Okay, and this global tribe, people can call it one government or whatever, but I'm telling you, it is. You can go find as many psychologists and be like, yo man, is it healthier to identify with a chunk of land, do you know, or is it healthier to identify with the human species and the flag of humanity in the future, of the nation of humanity, is has the DNA symbol on it, do you know, and in some sense behind it has, in some sense, you can say, a sort of light of the divine, or I don't know how would that would be designed, but I know the DNA symbol on a flag is the coolest flag to represent humanity. Okay, probably the cosmos behind it or something, you know, or our solar system. Oh my god, the solar system has to be there in the flag, the solar system and the DNA. Anyways, there's so many ways we can design the flag, but anyways, what I'm saying is, I have thought of what is the most advanced civilization, in a sense where my mind attempted to fathom, if everybody was their most advanced self and everything in the world was in its most advanced state, what would that advanced life look like? And this has fascinated me to such a degree that the presence of reality is no longer just limited to a story giving it meaning. It's like when you realize there's more unknown than known, you realize everything you've known and accepted and solidified your identity as, is just a position in a much more unknown position. Anyways, guys, I hope um, this lecture was interesting. There is a research component. I'm going to read this, it's pretty long. Okay, so I'm reading for you ChatGPT 5.4, and I pretty much, what did I ask? I asked it, what is the value of a one world government where nations the prototypes are for a one world government? I explained that they were because they follow the same geometry, this pattern of individuals becoming conscious and then unifying, and then these groups becoming conscious and unifying, and then these nations becoming conscious and unifying, and that unified state being like those politicians who it's like before any national anthem, there's the United Species anthem, and the United Species anthem in some sense explains how fascinating life is, and we reconstruct all the global culture based on fascination. They're like, what's the purpose of life? And we'll be like, we're in a gigantic unknown world. Anything you're fascinated by could be a purpose. You know. Anyways, to continue, AI says the academic view is that a one world government would be a single political authority over humanity as a whole, replacing or subordinating sovereign states under one higher legal order. In political philosophy, this idea is usually tied to cosmopolitanism, the view that all human beings belong morally to one community, and to debates in global justice about whether global problems require global institutions. The basic attraction is simple. If war often emerges from competing sovereign states, if war often emerges from competing sovereign states, then a higher command authority could, in theory, do globally what the modern state did domestically. I'll read that again. If war often emerges from competing sovereign states, then a higher common authority could, in theory, do globally what the modern state did domestically. Guys, I'm going to pause here. Something I said before was that, like, you got to see it this way too, that if these nations all identify as part of this grander nation, the nation of humanity that identifies with the human species and the human experience, like that's the most important value, right? Then all the resources can be located in anywhere of this new humanity, of this new universally conscious humanity. Do you know species level conscious activity? They're like, what are you living for? The person's like, okay, like if somebody, if imagine an extraterrestrial landed out of nowhere in a hypothetical sci-fi sense, right, and ask you, yo man, what are you living for on Earth? And you'd be like, okay man, it's like that question is deep, because from one angle I'm living for my whatever meaning I see in reality, but from another angle my expression and energy is in the presence of where the energy of the whole species is happening. It's like I'm in the same field of intelligence as my species, right? So on some level, I don't know the collective expression's outcome. It's unseen to me sometimes, but unless people communicate. But anyways, I'm going to keep reading this. It says, in theory, if war often emerges from competing sovereign states, then a higher common authority could, in theory, do globally what the modern state did domestically, reduce violent rivalry by monopolizing final authority, law, and enforcement. The United Nations already reflects a limited version of this logic. States remain sovereign, but they created a shared framework of peace, cooperation, and human rights rather than leaving all international life to raw power alone. From an academic historical perspective, nations were not exactly prototypes for a one world government, but they can be understood as partial precedents. A nation state is a territorially bounded sovereign polity ruled in the name of people who identify as a nation. Historically, many nation states emerged by consolidating smaller feudal, tribal, linguistic, or regional units into a larger centralized authority. In that sense, they show that human beings can widen the circle of political integration. Clans become cities, cities became kingdoms, kingdoms became states, and some states became nations. But a nation state is usually built on shared identity, territory, and self determination, while a one world government would have to govern across many civilizations, religions, languages, and political cultures without relying on one single nation as its basis. So nations are better seen as analogies or intermediate stages in political scaling, not direct blueprints. The most advanced view is that the value of a one world government depends on what problem you think politics is trying to solve. If politics exists mainly to prevent chaos among competing groups, then a one world government represents the logical completion of a political order. I'm going to read that again. If politics exists mainly to prevent chaos among competing groups, then a one world government represents the logical completion of political order. Humanity finally organizes itself at the level of the species rather than the tribe or nation. Under the view, nations may indeed have been prototypes in the deeper sense that they trained humanity to expand loyalty outward from family to city to kingdom to nation, and potentially one day to species level governance. But if politics is also meant to preserve plural ways of life, local meaning, and freedom from distant domination, then a one world government could become the final concentration of power rather than the final liberation from conflict. In that deeper sense, the real question is not merely one, in quotations, one government or many, but how much unity can humanity bear without crushing human diversity? That is the central civilizational tension. This is also why many thinkers prefer global governments to world government. Stronger cooperation, law, and institutions at the planetary level with one absolute centralized state. The academic view, my God. Sorry, guys, I'm reading the long version. What am I doing?
Okay, guys, here I'll read the short version. Academic view: a one world government is the idea of a single political authority above all nations. Its value academically is that it could reduce war, coordinate global problems like climate change and pandemics, and ground human rights in institutions that treat all people as morally equal rather than as citizens of separate states. The main academic concern is that such a system could become too centralized, too distant, and too powerful to resist if it turned oppressive. Were nations prototypes for a one world government? Partly. Nations were not direct blueprints, but they were earlier examples of human beings expanding political order beyond tribe, city, or region into larger units. In that sense, they can be as partial prototypes of wider integration. But nations are built around particular identities and borders, while a one world government would have to govern humanity as a whole across many identities at once. Exactly. That means that it's the advanced humanity, like see, this is what I dislike about just the connotation given to the words one world government. Just forget that. You're looking at the most advanced, wonder about the most this is the Mr. Withinian approach. Wonder about the most advanced possibility of civilization. Do you know? And in some sense, they is the one world government a phase in how that advanced state arises or not. And at some point it is, because they have a resource management issue. Nations are using the resources of the chunks of land they're in for power, right? But it's not that, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's just how history is now. But I'm saying, like, yo, if it was one humanity, one species, before we were all like defined by the ideologies and the behaviors of our localized languages, do you know? I'm saying, like, what would an advanced humanity look like? And it would have an advanced civilization, and it would say, yo, man, you guys, if you guys think, and like, let me tell you, in an advanced civilization, guys, the one world government, it doesn't exist in the way we think of it now. In an advanced civilization, every being is being made aware that they have access and are also responsible for the advancement of the human experience in the presence of this whole world. Anyways, I'm gonna keep reading this. There's one more point part left for the research component. It says most advanced view. The deepest value of a one world government would be that humanity finally governs itself at the level of the species, instead of remaining politically fragmented while holding planet scale power. It will mean political order catching up with technological and civilizational reality. But its deepest danger is equally profound. It could become the largest tyranny ever created if unity came before wisdom, constitutional limits, and protection of diversity. Wow. So the real issue is not just the world unity, but excuse me, the real issue is not just world unity, but whether humanity is mature enough to unite without becoming totalitarian. That's perfect. Do you know what that means, guys? It means, is the species mature enough, okay, to identify beyond their individual nationalistic, still personal way they've identified with who they are? Like, can you wake up tomorrow and realize you are a member of the human species, and if aliens invaded Earth and were bullying humans, you would care? Right? So it's as if it's like we have so transcended far beyond the era of racism, that to think of racism is like such a, it's primitive, it's wagon compared to a Bugatti. Do you know what I mean? And at this modern time, the depth of life has allowed a completely new engagement with the whole of reality itself. The one world government is another way of saying what is the most advanced state of being for humans, And to identify as a member, that means, you know how everybody has a passport to their nation. The United Species Council in the future is going to issue for everybody a species identification card, and it's going to have interstellar value. It's going to be, even if you're like lost in space, and like you're picked up by aliens, it's like, show them that. And it's the whole point of it is species level identification means that you are actually part of a species that has understood that it has outgrown just identifying with a chunk of land, with the colors given to a chunk of land. Just like how primitive people would put paint on their face, modern people wear suits, that paint is put on the face of the earth. Anyways, folks, I'm going to end the talk here. I hope it was interesting. My honest conclusion is this: I don't care about any conspiracy, any past prediction. I understand that the future generations will live in ways that we may not be able to understand. I believe that there's more unknown than known. And it's all about like us being tested on how much freedom not just we give to others, but do we give to ourselves. Our experience of the human species begins with the experience of one human, which is us. Everybody's like given one human experience, right? Like you're this unknown moment of awareness where you find the human body, and this human body is like what you've been managing your whole life, but you have been in awareness to not just the human body, but to, in some sense, a subjective models on the human body, and even probabilities that have lived ahead of them. So when we talk about one world government, I'm like, everybody relax. If there's still evil people trying to manipulate the advanced potential of human species, they're kind of fools that need to kind of, I don't know. I think the universe will kind of like, position, put them in their position. Because the highest solar rank on Earth is those who are near to the original Earth, the original reality. That means being cool used to be ascribed to the ego. Now it's being ascribed to simulated beings realizing there's an original value here. There's the presence of an original force moving the known, moving the unknown self in an unknown world. So to me, it went from good and bad to then unknown and known. And unknown is the actuality. To be content with the unknown is an incredible achievement. To realize that it's like, yo, man, you're telling me all these people are fighting over proofs of what is true. And where are we fighting? We're fighting on a planet, in a solar system, in a galaxy, in a universe, in a part of the observable universe. And the rest of it is so vast we cannot see. And everything we know about our cosmos is the past, light from the past. And the weird thing is, light doesn't exist in time. So there's something existent beyond time, and it's light. There's something very profound about why, in front of our eyes, we're all in the same world room, in the same outer realms, but behind our eyes, everybody is starting in their own inner realms of meaning. And you need to wonder. And this is why, for me, they're like, yo, man, do you believe in animal spirits? I'll be like, no, I don't believe it in the shamanic sense. I believe that when I looked at just the concept of an eagle that could fly from a branch to the sky and see the whole forest at the same time, that was a sign to me that the human being can have a zoomed in localized view and can have a very zoomed out non-local view. So that looking at the world from the looking at the whole forest at once from an unknown sky vibe is really where I found the most fascination, and usually the state where I find myself giving these talks or finding the titles. Anyways, folks, thank you for listening. I hope this was an interesting lecture. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, and the most advanced, in honor of the original moment that all conditional moments have arisen from. There is an unconditional administration to all conditions. I don't know how to say it, but it's like we're not, there's something within us that is seeking the original moment out of all the simulated views in life, summified as one singular reality we treat as real. It's like beyond treating it as real, it's like there is wonder about the furthest vision, and you'll be fascinated by all of this. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.